Hey everybody, this is Michael from michaeldrewmusic.com. I hope you're doing well today. I hold in my hand a book that has over 360 guitar chords. Look at how thick that thing is. Because of books like this, I am asked by my students all the time. They look at a book like this and they go, Mr. Drew, do you know all the chords? Because that's a pretty big task there, right? And the answer to that question is honestly no. I do not have every single chord voicing and every single chord shape in existence committed to memory. However, that would not be the way that I would recommend approaching chords. Rather, take the time to learn how to build chords. And if we do that, then any chord that comes our way, even if we've never played it before, we understand how to construct it. And so that's been my experience, is that, I may not have every chord shape exactly memorized, but I'm able to build chords as needed. So if a chord comes my way that I've not played before, I understand the theory behind that chord, I know how chords work, and I can build that chord and figure out how to play it pretty quickly and easily. That would be my encouragement to you. Take the time to learn how chords work, and you won't have to stress about memorizing everything in a book like this. Now, chords, that's a pretty big topic. And there are, of course, many, many different kinds of chords, but I would like to focus on the basic kind of chord today, the triad. So that's what we're going to look at. Now, if you're a guitar player like I am, if you like to strum guitar or ukulele or some other chordal instrument and sing, I still think the piano is going to be the best visual to understand chords. I play guitar chords and everything, but I visualize the piano when I'm building these chords, when I'm working on these chords. I play guitar, but I think about it like a piano. So even if you don't play piano, I would take the time to understand how the keys are laid out. I just think it's the best way to see visually how chords are going to work on any instrument. So without further ado, we are going to pop on over to the keyboard now, and we're going to break this down. Generally speaking, we can break music down into two main parts, melody and harmony. Now, melody refers to a passage of individual notes, one note at a time. You can think about a singer singing a melody. You can think about maybe a violinist playing individual notes at a time. Those would be melodies. Harmony is referring to multiple notes interacting together. Once we get two or more notes going at the same time, that would be a harmony. That's the category that chords fall into. Okay, so when we're trying to understand chords, when we're trying to understand triads, we are referring to the interaction of notes together. The first thing that we are going to do is we're going to look at a particular kind of interval today. Now, if you haven't yet seen my video on intervals, that'll be linked in the description down below. Please check that out. But the interval that we're going to focus on is the interval of a third. Now remember, intervals have two notes to them, and a third would be notes that are three notes apart. Okay, so if we take a look at the piano here, if we look at C, what is a third from there? We count C as one. We count 1, 2, 3. There's a third. And then if we start from E, 1, 2, 3, there's a third. Now, what is a triad? A triad would be two thirds stacked on top of each other. Okay, so we've got C to E, that's a third. We've got E to G, that's a third. Put those together, and now we have a chord. That would be a C major chord there. Now these three notes have names within the chord. We would call the first note the root note. The root note is where the letter name of the chord comes from. Okay, so if you hear about a C chord or a D chord or a G chord, or a B flat chord, whatever the chord is, the name of the chord is the root note. So if the chord is a B flat chord, the root note is B flat. So that's an easy one to remember. At least that's built into the name, the root note. Okay? The next note up is called the third, which makes sense because it's 3 from the root note. And the last note is called the fifth. Now, that's called the fifth because it's 5 notes from C. It's a fifth from C, but it's still a third from E. So we would still say the chords are built on thirds, even though the G is 5 notes from C. So we got root, third, fifth, third, and a third. So we know that a triad is 2 thirds stacked on top of each other. But to understand how these chords are working, we have to know what kinds of thirds these are. Okay, so C to E, what kind of a third is that? Now, if you watch the video on intervals, we talk about this, that a major third, that is going to be 4 half steps, okay? So if I'm on C, remember a half step is the smallest distance in music. So 1, 2, 3, 4. C to E, right there is a major third. Okay, E to G, what is that going to be? 1, 2, 3. 3 half steps. That would be called a minor third. Okay, so we have a major third followed by a minor third. That is what we get when we play a major chord. Okay, so a major chord is a major third followed by a minor third. Now let's take a look at a minor chord. Okay, so a minor chord would be this. Okay, now you see what I did is I took the C, E, G we were playing, C major. I took the middle note and I lowered it by a half step, okay? So this middle note here, this third, is really important. That's the note that determines whether or not the chord is a major chord or a minor chord. You notice the 2 outside notes, they stay the same. C and G are the same in a C major and a C minor. It's the middle note that toggles the chord between major and minor. Okay, so when we take that middle note and we lower it, in this case we flat it, that turns it into a C minor. Okay, now what kinds of thirds are we playing now? Well, C to E flat, 1, 2, 3, that is 3 half steps. That is now a minor third. E flat to G, 1, 2, 3, 4, that is now 4 half steps. That is now a major third. So the C minor chord is a minor third followed by a major third. Now, isn't that interesting? A major chord and a minor chord both have a major and a minor third in them. But a major chord would have the major third first. So it would be a major third followed by a minor third. A minor chord is reversed. It has the minor third first and the major third second. So those are the 2 big ones, the major and the minor. We're going to look at a couple of other less common chords, but those are the 2 that I want you to focus on, is know how to play a major chord and know how to play a minor chord. Now, there are 2 other less common chords that I would like to look at briefly. Okay, so we've got the major chord, major minor, minor chord, minor, major third. Okay, so what are the 2 other combinations that we're missing here? You think about it. What about minor, minor? Okay, if you look at that, now I've got C to E flat, that's a minor third. And then E flat to G flat, that's a minor third. Okay, so now I'm stacking 2 minor thirds on top of each other. When we do that, we call that a diminished chord. So this will be written D-I-M, like C-D-I-M, or the symbol for a diminished chord is a little circle. So you might see a C and then a circle. That would be a diminished chord there. Minor third, minor third. Now for our last chord combination, major, major, right? So if I go back to C major again, I've got a major third and a minor third. If I take my top note here and I raise it by a half step, okay, now we have major third, major third, major, major. That is called augmented. And the shortened form of that is aug, C aug, A-U-G, or it'll be a plus sign, C plus. On a chord chart, that'll be an augmented chord there, major, major. Now let's apply the chord knowledge that we just learned to some real-world applications, okay? Because I want to draw that connection. You know, music theory doesn't mean anything if we can't actually use it to play music. So rather than just understanding these concepts, I want to actually apply them. Okay, so let's take a couple of chords that maybe are less common, that may pop up on a chord chart or in a song that you're playing, that we may need to build. Okay, let's see if we can actually build these chords together. Let's say we're playing a song and we run into the chord A flat major, right? Which on a chord chart would just say A flat. It wouldn't have an M or anything by it. It would just be A flat. How do we build that chord? Let's say we've not played that chord before. Let's say we are unfamiliar with it. The first thing we would have to do is find our root note. Now the root note is the name, right? So we know that the first note in that chord is A flat. And we have now learned that major chords are going to be a major third followed by a minor third, right? And you remember, that major third there, that's going to be 4 half steps. And that minor third, that's going to be 3 half steps. Okay, so I've got my A flat here, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. C would be my major third. Okay, then from C, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. C to E flat, there's my minor third. Put it all together, and we have A flat, root note, C, third, E flat, fifth. And there's A flat major. Okay, how about we do a minor chord now? What about F sharp minor? That's a popular chord. You know, you'll see that one in the key of A sometimes, F sharp minor. How would we play that one? Okay, let's figure it out. So our root note is, of course, F sharp. All right, so we know our root note. We've got that one figured out. Now, remember, the minor chord is going to go minor third, major third. So we're looking for the 3 half steps first, and then the 4 half steps. Okay, so here's the root note. 1, 2, 3. There's my minor third. And 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my major third. Put them together. And there's the chord. F sharp minor. F sharp root note. A would be the minor third there. C sharp would be the 5th. F sharp minor. Okay, what about G diminished? How do you suppose we'd do that? Let's check that one out. So the root note is, of course, G. And remember, now we need minor, minor to build a diminished triad. So we're going to be looking for 3 half steps and then 3 half steps again. So here's my G. 1, 2, 3. There's a minor third. And then from the B flat, 1, 2, 3, D flat. There is our G diminished. And you can even hear that, right? Our ear helps us with this. We can tell that's a diminished chord. You can hear that that's neither major nor minor. That's something different. That's that real dissonant sound there. So there it is, G diminished. Lastly, let's take a look at an augmented chord. How about E augmented? E aug. Right? Usually for augmented chords, you'll see an AUG after them, or sometimes a plus sign after the chord, E plus or E aug. Our root note is going to be E. Okay, and remember we're looking for major, major. So 4 half steps twice in a row. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. G sharp is my major third. Okay, and then if I wanted to do an augmented chord, go another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that note in this case is technically B sharp, not C, because I'm taking the major chord here with the 5th, which is B, and I'm raising that by a half step, I'm sharpening it. So there we go. So we've got E would be our root note, G sharp, the major third, and then we've got B sharp, the raised 5th, right? A little tricky there, but that would be E augmented. So I hope you can see from those brief examples why this is so important to be able to build these chords. You know, if you have this little bit of information, just the pattern of whole steps and half steps that we need to know, and if you know a little bit about intervals, you should be able to build any chord that you need. And so that to me is the biggest reason to learn this, so that if a chord pops up that we are unfamiliar with, we know how to build it. Now, the other thing that I'll say about chords is that they are going to impact melodies. They're going to help us understand melodies. They're going to help us write melodies better. And here's what I mean by that. So if I'm playing a chord, C, E, G, like a C chord, and I am writing a melody over that chord, if I know that the 3 notes in a C chord are C, E, G, if I know that, then I know that any of those notes in my melody will sound great. You know, if I sing a C or a G, or an E, if I play or sing any of those notes over the C chord, it's gonna sound good. And so that is another advantage to understanding how chords work. Now that doesn't mean that there's a rule that you have to play or sing notes in your melody that are within the chord. You could do other notes. In fact, sometimes that's the best thing to do. You know, what if you did like a, you know, and you sang like that D over top of a C chord. Now you're adding a 4th note to the mix. You're creating a more complex harmony now. So that's great, but I know for sure that C, E, and G are going to sound good, and sometimes those will be the best options. So that's another reason why understanding chords and the notes that are within the chord is so important, is it's going to help us when we are, you know, improvising melodies or composing melodies. So I just think it furthers our understanding of music and how melody interacts with harmony. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining me for this brief explanation on triads. It is truly my hope that this video will give you the information and the confidence that you need to build any chords that come your way. If you found this to be helpful, Please be sure to click the thumbs up button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget the video on intervals will be linked in the description as well, so if you haven't checked that out, please do so. As always, have a wonderful time making music, and let's get to work on building those chords.